All right, next up, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you a longtime friend of the Greenwood County Democratic Party. Miss Evvie Harmon actually moved here from Greenville a couple of years back. She and her husband own a dental practice here in Greenwood, so they are local business owners. But Evvie also has the distinction of being one of the founding members of the Women's March back in 2017. How many of you went out with your pink hats and marched up and down? We have quite a few here who did. Evvie was one of the organizers of that event, and she's been an activist working in South Carolina ever since. She moved to Greenwood. She is now starting to come out of her shell and become active with us at the Greenwood Party, and I am so grateful to have Evvie come on up and spend a few words talking about Precinct Organization and how important it is within our society. To the next slide.
Perfect.
And make sure you're right on the microphone.
Alrighty. I was not expecting to be mic'd, so I'm gonna have to keep my voice down so I don't blow you guys out of the venue. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's a pleasure to speak here again. I think I came in 2018 when I was working as the upstate coordinator for James Smith and Mandy Powers Norrell. So it's a pleasure to be here with you again. So what I want to talk to you guys about today is precinct reorganization. One of the things that you have to understand as a precinct president, you're taking the responsibility for a laundry list of things that the South Carolina Democratic Party has listed in their handbook. And it's very daunting. So one of the things that I think is really important once you make the decision to become that precinct president, and unfortunately we don't have a lot of activism on the precinct levels really anywhere in South Carolina. So if you show up to a precinct reorganization meeting, which I believe is in March, you'll probably be the president because you'll probably be the only one that shows up for your precinct. And then you get your list of responsibilities and you go, oh, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this and do my job and raise my kids and cook dinner and clean my house, and then you just shut down and nothing happens. I have been there. So I kind of went back as a precinct president and said, well, what made me very successful as an organizer for activism or for political candidates? And really what it came down to was very specific roles amongst the volunteers that you create. So the South Carolina Democratic Party's layout for precincts is just like the party, just like the county chairs. You have your president, your first vice president, your second vice president, your third vice president. And as a precinct president, I'm going, what did these people do? I understand why we have the distinctions, especially if you go and look in the handbook. Diversity really matters. I mean, we understand that as a Democratic Party. So if I'm the precinct president as a white woman, I need someone who is not white on my team. I need someone who is a man on my team. Ideally, you want people that are in their 20s, their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You want a whole diverse group of people behind you. So I kind of said, what if we were to do it a little bit different? So I think that what makes more sense is once you become a precinct president, once you put out all the feelers in your precincts, get on social media, talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends. You know, as soon as you become precinct president, you get a hold of the voter file and Bill teaches you how to use it. And you reach out and you find some volunteers and you have your first potluck or your first party. And you've got like 7 or 8 people there and you're so excited. Well, these are your volunteers because they showed up. You need to immediately assign them some roles. So, I mean, of course you want your vice president, someone who's your right-hand man or woman. You want them by your side, knowing everything that you're trying to accomplish so they can step in if something happens to you. From there, I highly suggest creating specific roles. So you need a volunteer coordinator, somebody to actually find and recruit more volunteers that are going to work under you to get out the vote. You need a get out the vote volunteer. You need someone to actually print out these walk lists, these call lists, create events in your precinct. You don't want your volunteer coordinator also having to find all of the events and do all of the busy work, you know, behind the scenes to make their volunteers successful. And if you can notice, this is the same amount of people that the South Carolina party uses. It's just different titles. You want a fundraising and events coordinator. Unfortunately, we can't do politics in America without money. Facts. So we got to raise some money. And the best way to raise money is to have fun and do events. And then you want a secretary to record your minutes, make sure you're staying on track, and then of course your treasurer to manage your money. Does that make a little bit more sense to you guys than first vice president, second vice president, third vice president, and so on? Okay, so where to start? Obviously you want to start with your friends. Your like-minded friends. Peer pressure is a really great tool when it comes to volunteerism. Yeah, volunteer coordinators know that. Second, the voter file, right? The voter file is a great tool. It tells you who voted in what elections and who they voted for. So you can actually target, okay, we have women from 20 to 40 that have voted in the last 2 elections, or I say 30 to 40 that have voted in the last 2 elections, but didn't vote in this very, very, very last one. Like, why? So you can also find, you can find voters that have voted in every election. I love those voters. If you have a voter that votes in the off elections and the runoffs, and you're just like, okay, that person's active, or at the very least they know when to vote, and they vote in every election. So reach out to those people. Social media is a great tool. And then once you get all of your volunteers, you get your feelers out there, I love to use free tools. There's no need to pay for stuff that's out there. Google Forms is a really easy way to get volunteer information, to get their name, their phone number, their email address, their physical address, all the things you need to be able to hunt down your volunteers when they stop answering their calls. Yeah, I've done it. Like, you're not answering your phone. If you don't want to be a volunteer, that's fine. You don't have to be. This is volunteerism, but please communicate to me, your coordinator, that you're not wanting to do this anymore. And generally they say, okay, I'll do it. All right, so once you've recruited your team, the very next thing you need to do, and pretty quickly, is create something fun. Potlucks are really easy. This is the South. Everybody learned how to cook from their grandmother, so everybody's really good cooks. If you don't want to do a potluck and you don't want to open up your home, support a local business, especially a business that is run by friendlies. You can do a bonfire, s'mores. That's a great fun thing to do. And then also puppy yoga. I'm a yoga teacher and I foster puppies. So if you ever want to do some puppy yoga, we can do that at my precinct reorg.
I had to Google puppy yoga to find that. I never heard of that.
Oh, that's so cute. That's so cute. No, it's a thing. Goat yoga, puppy yoga. Okay, I'm a big fan of having some cocktails, but at the same time, I also feel like there's a lot of people that try to shy away from alcohol, and it's more inclusive if you try to create events that don't revolve around alcohol. And also for our under 21, right? We want to excite the 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. It'd be illegal to serve them alcohol, and then they feel left out. So I think it's good practices to keep it PG. Okay, so assign roles and action items. This should be completed within the first quarter of precinct's leadership. So by March, your team should have their title. They should know exactly what their action items are. So if you're a volunteer coordinator, your #1 goal is to get out there and get an army of volunteers. If you are the Get Out the Vote coordinator, you need to start figuring out how to print out walk maps and canvassing maps and text banks and all of those GOTV tools that we do. If you're the fundraiser, please start fundraising, because as soon as we recruit some of those candidates to file and to start running, they're going to need some financial support. So putting the first quarter into action would be identifying registered voters and start reaching out. Begin voter registration drives. It's never too easy to register new voters. And talk to your GOP neighbors. We all have them. My next door neighbor is a big old Trumpster, but she makes my dogs homemade dog treats, and I let her put up her giant blow-up Santa Claus underneath my magnolia tree because she said it looked better there. And you know what? We might be able to have a conversation and get a like-minded school board person elected because she was a teacher. She's not nuts when it comes to that. So these are why it's important. You probably will never flip them to straight Democrat, but you might be able to get them to vote for the Lisa Ellises and the Bill Kimblers. Second quarter, okay, your volunteer coordinator should be gathering her army of volunteers or his. Recruit candidates for uncontested races. This is a huge thing. We can't go out and vote for Democratic candidates if they're not running. Start a postcard campaign and make them targeted to the demographics of your neighborhood. Postcard campaigns, I get a lot of slack for them from some of my activist peers. I did the 100,000 postcard campaign for James Smith. We did it too late. What I learned from this is it's not good for getting out the vote. A postcard does not equal a vote at the ballot box, but what it does do is it gets people a touch, and it also cleans up the voter file. It makes it so we're not wasting our time when we go out to canvass. I couldn't stand it when I went to go canvass and the person I was going to go talk to wasn't there anymore. And instead it was a Republican and a Trumpster who did not want to see me, and I had like 30 seconds to get off their property before they got their gun. So it's really, really important to do postcard campaigns for the expressed point of making your life easier when election day rolls around. Create fun and open spaces. To be creative. Creativity is how we grow and how we keep doing amazing things. And then fundraise, emphasis on fun. All of this should be fun. If it's not fun, it's gonna be really, really, really hard to motivate dozens of people to do this hard work for free. Third quarter, keep the first 2 quarters going. You never stop doing what you're doing, you just build on it. Reach out to the declared candidates. By now, you will have your declared candidates. Filing is closed, we've got what we've got. So start reaching out to them and get them into some of your fun events that you're doing to meet your volunteers and to get really excited about that candidate. And then start coordinating canvassing with your candidates, right? Because having the candidate go and talk to somebody is much more powerful than me coming to talk to that person on the candidate's behalf. And then once you start canvassing, this is the big thing I learned in 2018. It's not enough to knock on somebody's door and say, please go vote on election day. The most important thing is to get their vote plan. I see you're registered to vote. What's your vote plan? Are you voting early? Are you mailing in your ballot? Are you going on election day? Actually write that down. So when I'm getting ahead of myself. Keep that information. That is important information. Okay, fourth quarter. This is when it gets really fun and really crazy, and the fourth quarter goes like a blink because really election day's in November, so it's not even a full quarter. You're going to unleash your Get Out the Vote plan that you've orchestrated with your absolutely amazing team. You're going to use the postcard campaign from the second quarter to identify voters that will vote, and if you scrub the voter file correctly, every door you knock on will be the person you intend to talk to, which is great. Canvass like your life depends on it. It really all comes down to canvassing. I love these new innovative things we do to get out the vote, but at the end of the day, nothing beats one-on-one interactions. And then get vote plans from potential voters. Now here's where it gets really insane. Election week. This is the early voting, the day it opens, through the polls closing. This is the most important week of the last year. So make sure your team has planned to have as much of that week off as possible. I mean, I get people have jobs, people have to feed their families, I understand. But if you've got, a couple weeks of paid time off and you don't have any big 2-week vacations planned, go ahead and ask for election week off. Make sure your team has election day off. Just try to make that a requirement. Just go ahead and put it in with your bosses now. You need this day off. You're going to set up what we called war rooms. I set up 11 across the upstate when I was working for James Smith. You can go to churches, you can go to somebody's house, you can go to restaurants, just anywhere that has Wi-Fi. And what you're going to do is you're going to set up your army of volunteers and you're going to have all of your canvassing information, and you are going to start calling all the people you canvassed. Hi, this is Evvie. Remember me? I'm your precincts leader. So just following up on your vote plan. Have you voted yet? Yes, I voted early. Check. Move to the next one. No, I didn't vote and I'm stressed out. My car broke down. I don't have a right. Great. Where do you live? We'll be around to pick you up in about 10 minutes and take you to the polls. We took a couple of hundred voters to the polls over those 11 locations on election day. Vote plans was what saved us in that situation. Hold your canvassing voters to their vote plans. This is accountability, right? Making sure they're doing what they said they're going to do. Get out the vote, baby. It's a beautiful thing when it's well organized. And I mean, we wept. Even though James lost by like 7 points, we wept after that election day because we all worked so hard. So yeah, that's a crash course into precincts leadership.
Thank you, Evvie. Please stay. We actually have a couple of minutes if anybody wants to ask a question of Evvie Harmon. I do want to make one correction on something you said about the vote builder file. You probably didn't even realize you said it. Nobody knows who you voted for. That is kept secret. The best we can do is find out, like you did say, when you voted. And even in the primaries, you have to pick, am I voting in a Democratic primary or a Republican primary? Doesn't say who you voted for, doesn't even tell me you're a Democrat or Republican. Gives me a hint. You know, we know a lot of Republicans tried to participate in the presidential primary. So you got to kind of look at the big picture. But who you voted for is always secret.
Thank you for the correction. That is correct.
We do have a question.
On your postcard, what did you include on yours?
So for the postcard campaign that I ran for James, it was actually really kind of elegant system. We had a script, right? It was the 3 main issues that James and Mandy were really punching, and you couldn't deviate from the script. You couldn't write your own stuff because candidates like control over their own messaging. And then we would just ask people to do it on literal 3x5 note cards. And we got like stickers and decorated them and stuff. And then we had volunteers that went out and raised money for stamps, and we would give stamps to the volunteers that were organizing these postcard parties so that it wasn't too expensive on the volunteers. But to answer your question, the candidate will most likely give you the language they want for their postcards.
That's a good question. Any others? All right. Thank you, Evvie. Appreciate it.